Look at this supply and demand curve. In consumer tech, the standard playbook is simple. Lower your price and you sell more units. Companies constantly slash margins and cram in more features. It quickly turns into a chaotic race to the bottom. Everyone fights to capture the most budget-conscious buyers. Then you have Apple. Every year, they sell hundreds of millions of iPhones, despite charging significantly more than almost every single competitor in the space. This dynamic isn't new. It has been happening consistently since 2007, right at the inception of the modern smartphone era. By completely ignoring the race to the bottom and thriving anyway, Apple breaks the traditional economic rule of competing on price. Imagine if Apple woke up tomorrow and decided to cut the price of the iPhone by 30%. The immediate assumption is that sales would skyrocket, but Apple avoids this. A sudden, massive discount would alter the way the public views the phone, potentially harming their standing in the market. If the price dropped, a large portion of the customer base would likely start questioning the quality of the device, viewing the newly cheapened product as less valuable. To understand why a lower price would actually hurt sales, we have to put away the spec sheets and look directly at human psychology. Apple prioritizes the psychological perception of value over the raw cost of parts, focusing on how the buyer views the product rather than how much it costs to build. Most of us don't know the exact transistor count on a microchip or the millimeter specs of a camera sensor. There is simply too much technical data for a typical buyer to process. This creates a blind spot, which brings us to a psychological concept known as price-quality perception. When consumers lack total technical information, the human brain uses a high price tag as a mental shortcut. Better. Instead of spending millions trying to educate buyers on RAM and processor speeds, Apple uses this cognitive bias to their advantage. They aren't pricing the phone based strictly on the cost of glass and metal. They set a number high enough to trigger that exact psychological shortcut. Here is a diagram showing two identical coffee cups. One costs 80 rupees and the other costs 350. Before taking a single sip or smelling the roast, almost anyone walking into that shop will expect the 350 rupee drink to be vastly superior. That is the power of positioning, and it maps perfectly onto Apple's entire business model. They reinforce that high price by engineering the entire physical experience. The packaging feels heavy and expensive in your hands before the device is even turned on. Once it is on, the user interface remains simple, clean, and intuitive. From the minimalist layout of their physical stores to the weight of the box, every single touchpoint is designed to justify the premium you just paid. But this strategy is a double-edged sword. You can't just slap a massive price tag on a terrible product and survive the market. A high price creates a massive expectation in the buyer's mind. The device actually has to work flawlessly to meet that standard. When a product consistently delivers on that intense expectation year after year, it builds deep, unshakable consumer trust. The combination of a high entry price and the reliable delivery of that promise is what creates a resilient, premium brand. So, what should an entrepreneur or creator actually take away from this model? The lesson is absolutely not to raise your prices for no reason. The goal is to step out of the race to the bottom entirely and stop trying to be the absolute cheapest option available. Enduring businesses focus on building something people genuinely trust and creating an experience they are happy to pay a premium for. In business, the strongest players don't win by being the least expensive. They win by becoming the most valuable in the customer's mind.